Welcome to Podcastville. This podcast offers so many wonderful opportunities to have conversations with people from all walks of life. Bobby Lloyd is an old friend of mine from way back in the day. He's someone that I've admired for his outlook and his approach to living life and getting the most out of experiences. Not just settling for the job that you have. Yes, he's got regular jobs that he did. But I always admired that he would save up his money and always have these aspirations and these places that he wanted to go. And I've seen him realize those dreams and do these things over the past couple years. And in doing this podcast, I felt like talking about the art of travel and the art of adventure and seeking those things, and that maybe it's it's a type of lifestyle that is not for everybody, but it's a lifestyle that inspires and speaks to everybody because, as we talk about in this podcast, a lot of people always refer to, oh man, when you go on that trip, I would do it to Bobby myself. I would say, oh my goodness, man, how was that trip to India? I've dreamt of going to India. I really want to go, And we list all these things that make it such an unrealizable thing. But truly, it's not that hard to save up money, organize your time, plan it out in your calendar, and make that trip happen. Make it all a reality. So I wanted to have Bobby on today to talk about that. And I'm really grateful that he came on. He's just about to be moving out to Tucson, Arizona. And so I felt it was such a ripe time, such a perfect time, not a ripe time, to grab that conversation with him and be able to talk with him now. And obviously down the road when he's traveling as well and doing some other stuff, I should say after he's traveling, or maybe we'll do a trip together. So thank you for listening and thank you for tuning in. I just want to take a second and tell you to please comment, please subscribe, please review, and enjoy the podcast that I did with the wonderful, the talented, the adventurous, Mr. Bobby Lloyd. All right, Mr. Bobby Lloyd, thank you so much for being on Our Talk Music, man. It's wonderful to have you on here. How you doing today, man?
Pleasure. It was a nice surprise that you asked me, and I'm honored to be here. Happy to be finally sitting down. We talked about doing a podcast before, so it's
man.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited for it.
We got a lot to talk about, man. You were just traveling. You were around the world, man. It was so cool seeing some of the stories and stuff like that, and I think it's kind of accurate for you to tell the listeners where you just were. What was your most recent adventure?
Yeah, so my last trip, I left in the beginning of April 2018, and I flew into Bangkok, Thailand. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, I thought I would be spending a good amount of time in Thailand. I've been planning to go there since 2010. I've been wanting to go there. I got kind of fascinated with it while I was backpacking through India back in 2010. And I only ended up spending about 2 weeks in Thailand because it was a lot to handle over there. It was there was quite a bit. All the rumors about the sexual tourism industry are true. Well, I don't know if all of them are true, but as much as I heard,
as much as you researched, huh?
Yeah, as much as I heard everything about the
no, that's absolutely something.
The T girls and the surgeries, and then all of the men flying from all over the world to go, and it was kind of depressing for me to see this land where I felt like tourism was really having a very negative effect on their culture and their land. Yeah, well, not their economies, but you hate to see all these beautiful young women who might be some of the brightest young women of their community getting involved in prostitution. It's probably not the epitome of what they're made for.
It's true, man. I mean, women, especially just in general, in a lot of different cultures outside the U.S., really get put in a lot of different positions that in this culture don't quite, women don't think about as far as their rights and stuff like that. I feel that a lot whenever I go to Colombia, and so that feeling of depression and feeling like all of a sudden you're one of those creeps. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like feeling like a creep. I didn't like hanging out with the older guys. You kind of collect energy from the people around you, kind of gather their vibe. And when you're dealing with a lot of these guys, I can't really tell you how they got there, but it's not really where you would aspire to be as a man in his 50s or 60s to be saving up your money. That's not where I would aspire to be.
Right. To say the least, as well as you would hope that you wouldn't be in your old age in another country with a young woman.
It's an unfair share of Thailand. I did spend 3 weeks in Thailand, and I did love it.
Tell me about the stuff that you love, man.
Of it. Yeah,
I remember I asked you about the fighting, and did you go to the Muay Thai fights? You told me you went to more than one, right?
Yeah. I went to a couple Muay Thai fights. I watched quite a bit of Muay Thai on TV. And to be honest with you, I was absolutely amazed at the style of fighting that those guys take place in. They don't really try not to get hit, which in every type of fighting that I've ever practiced or learned, when there's people swinging at you, of course you block if you can't not get hit, but it's better not to get hit. And these guys just kind of stand right in the danger zone with each other, and it might be like a dishonorable thing to move backwards, or it might just be a bad strategy. I don't really understand why, but they're just laying blows on each other, and the guy will swing a hook as hard as he can for your head, and instead of moving, you just take it on your arms. Granted, they're made out of wood, they're tougher men than me. There's probably quite a few 110-pound Thai guys that can whoop my ass in some solid ways.
Right, that have easily had over like 100, 200 fights, you know, by the age of 19, you know.
So I met this guy who was a national champion. But he was in his late 50s when I met him. But he took me through photo albums and
took you through memory lane.
He walked through memory lane with me, and it was a pretty beautiful experience. Like seeing that Muay Thai had taken him all over the world. When he was a young man, he'd been to New York City, he'd been to Hawaii, he'd been to Japan, he'd been to Hong Kong, and Australia, and all these places to fight Muay Thai, which is absolutely an amazing experience for a young man from Thailand. There's not a lot of things that can create that type of opportunity for you in your life, and he's just such a positive person. But you could also just tell that he had taken a little bit too much damage in his life. Like his face was messed up, and maybe some brain damage. We had a fun time though. He liked to, anytime he'd tell me a joke, he'd punch me really hard in either the arm or the shoulder. Which
that's quite the punchline, man.
So he'd tell a joke and then laugh at his own joke, and then immediately deliver a blow as hard as he could to me. Which, I mean,
that's awesome.
I'm twice his size and half his age, but it was still pretty painful.
He ain't scared of you, right?
No reason for him to be. I probably couldn't hurt him if I tried. And then there's a lot of great people there. I ended up making a trip across the border to Laos, which is a small country in Southeast Asia, and that was when I started to really fall in love with the region and really fall in love with if I hadn't made it to Laos, I feel like I might have decided to come home early from Thailand, because it wasn't really what I was hoping for my trip there. When I made it to Laos, I fell in love within a day or two. It was an absolutely incredible country, completely underrated, by far the least touristed of that region. And just, I mean, of course, scenery and views culture make up reasons to go travel someplace. Food, but the way that the people act and the way that the people behave, it really makes or breaks a place in my mind. And when I was in Thailand, there was a feeling, I felt that the tourism was sort of having a negative impact on the country, and I feel like a lot of the Thai people that weren't involved in profiting off of tourism had a similar feeling. When I got to Laos, they didn't really allow you to have such an impact on if you don't go in there. And if you're not interested and kind to speak to a Laotian person, they're probably going to ignore you. But as soon as I will walk down the street and I'm a 6'2" white guy, and probably one of the biggest guys that's been in this street in a good while, and nobody goes out of their way to look at me, take pictures of me, do any type of it. But as soon as I take interest in a situation that's going on, their hearts were warm, their arms were open, and they were very accepting and kind. And then food was amazing. It was a great time, man.
What was a typical play like in Laos? Like, tell me that.
A typical what now?
A typical play, because I've had definitely a good bit of Southeast Asian food, but never Laos.
So a beef noodle soup, a bowl of pho was pretty common for the entire region for me to be anywhere. But let me think. So in Laos, have you ever been to a region where people eat shared meals with their hands? Yeah. So what's pretty common there is for there to be probably, if you were to arrange on a table, 6 different plates, so different vegetable stir fry, maybe a pickle, maybe a fish dish, maybe a chicken dish,
right.
Perhaps another vegetable, and then a big bowl of like sticky rice. And each person will grab a little piece of sticky rice, and then use that to reach into it, depending which bowl they feel like taking a bite out of.
Yeah.
And so it's very
what is sticky rice? What's different about sticky rice than like brown or white rice?
Sticky rice would be like more similar to like sushi.
Okay.
Sushi rice or something similar to that. So it's just it sticks together more doughy like bread.
Sure.
So they use it similar. So when I was in India, they eat in a similar manner, but they do it with the chapati, right? So
chapati.
Yeah. So chapati is like or roti is an Indian
grain.
It's like an Indian grain bread. It comes across as like a much more hearty and filling tortilla. Just so similar style of eating, and then they'll use that and rip off a little piece and reach that into the bowl, pinch a little piece of whatever they're trying to eat, and then eat it like that.
I've seen that.
And I hope I'm speaking a little bit with my hands here. I hope that it's translating to the audio, but I feel like I'm telling a good story. So, so that was pretty common in Laos. I saw some amazing stuff in Laos, man. So when I got to.
Is that where you bought the motorcycle?
I rented a motorcycle in Laos. I ended up buying a motorcycle in Vietnam. So my first foray into Laos was a 2-day boat trip down the Mekong River from the border of Thailand to Luang Prabang, which is a national heritage site. And on this 2-day boat trip, it was like 60 tourists from all over the world and probably 20 Laotian people.
Yeah.
And so you ride the boat for about 8 hours and then chill in this little tiny village that their entire economy is just taking the tourists off of this boat and trying to house them or feed them or provide beverages for them or whatever, try to get some of their money.
Sure.
And then another day, so on this boat trip, I was just making so many friends from all over the world.
How long was the boat trip? I mean, I'm guessing it was, 5-6 hours?
There were 2 8-hour trips. Two 8-hour trips. So an 8-hour trip 2 times. I mean, it was great. I kind of stuck out as an American. There was quite a few English people, Irish, French, Spanish.
Did you get sick at all on the boat or no?
You know what? In comparison to some other places that I've traveled, I didn't get any type of stomach sickness at all while I was in Asia, like hardly at all, which when you're in India, it's almost unavoidable. They call it deli belly. And you're getting
deli belly. I like that.
Yeah, deli belly, and your stomach feels like it's just made out of liquid, it's not a good feeling. Nobody enjoys it. But India's worth it. And then in Mexico, I got sick quite a few times, and they call that Montezuma's revenge. And so I was talking to
Montezuma's revenge.
I was wondering if you ever get acclimated and you stop getting sick, because it seemed like every 2 weeks or so while I was in Mexico, all of a sudden I just am spending 2 days in the bathroom, where I'm like in the bathroom 10 or 15 times that day, and I'm never 15 feet more than 15 or 20 feet away, you know? So I talked to these expat guys that have been there for 10 years, and they were like, "Are you kidding me? No, that happens the whole time we're here. Yeah, they call it Montezuma's Revenge." Yeah. So
Get used to it.
Yeah. I didn't ask any of the Mexican people if that's just, that might just be a permanent stay of their life, but I feel like it might just be a tourist thing.
I think there are some of those situations. Definitely there is just like the food poisoning. You know what I'm saying? Like the odd situation. I think I remember I was flying in from. I had a super long flight from just this past September from Cape Town up to London, and then from London over to Amsterdam. And I like flew in and got jumped on the bus to the city in Amsterdam because my friend, a bass player that I was staying with, was playing a gig, and so I like showed up to the club he was playing and stuff, and had been drinking on the airplanes coming, So when I got there, I was feeling pretty nice, and when I got to the bar, first thing I did was just order a couple beers, and of course go out and ask about the coffee shop. So I went and found some, and then I came back and drank more beers. I can't remember how many beers I drank in that night, but then I went and asked the lady in the front of the club and was like, "Where do you recommend I go eat?" And she was like, "Well, there's a really good kebab place down the street, And I was like, "All right, like I'm down, And I went and had some, and it was delicious. It was amazing. It was like this is exactly what I needed. And then just a couple hours later, man, it was like, I don't think that was what you needed, man.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just, people will blame people for something, but when you come from one side of the world and you go to another side of the world, the minerals are different over there. The growing practices are different over there. For sure. The livestock practices are different. Might just be a completely different type of animal that you're eating.
It's true.
So there's all sorts of different reasons why you could have a tough time digesting.
And the water that they cook with, or all kinds of different stuff. But it's always crazy whenever that happens, and when you're abroad and you just got to deal with that mud butt for a couple of days, or just for a long day, and you're just like, God dang, is this ever gonna end?
So let me tell you this crazy story about Laos while I was there.
All right.
So I was in Luang Prabang, and I had rented a motorcycle to ride around for a few days. And when you got your own motorcycle, you're working on your own schedule. I was able to see a lot of the national parks and a lot of the main attractions for that region pretty quickly. So then I just started exploring by myself, and I bought this map, and I was exploring, and I checked, and there was this sign on this map that was up this road about 60 kilometers, and it said Cave of Teeth. And it was Cave of Teeth, yeah. So I get the urge to drive there. I was like, well, I've seen a lot of this other stuff. This looks like a nice drive to go up this hill. I was up in these mountains, and I was like, well, yeah, I'll go check it out. So I'm driving to the Cave of Teeth. It takes me about 45 minutes. And when I get to the point where it says it should be on the map, I start looking for it, and I'm not seeing anything. And then I see a sign that is just about a square foot off of the side of the road, just pointing off into the jungle. And it says Cave of Teeth. And there's just a little dirt trail right there. So I park my motorcycle, and I decide to walk off into the jungle and go check it out. So I'm walking into the jungle, and then as I come out into a farm. I'm on somebody's farm, and then I cross a creek that just has a log that walks across this creek. Yeah. And then I'm on to someone else's farm, and I walk, and then eventually where the trail ends is just at somebody's house. So there's just these three women there sleeping in their little shack. Whoa. What do you mean it's just three women? There's three women. So the men are probably off at work, and the women are there taking care of the babies and the farm and the animals and stuff. It's pretty common for the culture in that world for men to have to go get a job and women take care of what's going on. So there's three women just kind of living in this very crudely constructed shack. And, of course, they don't speak English, and I don't speak Laotian at all. So I know one word. I know sobaidi. So I say sobaidi, which means like hello, I believe, and and they just kind of point at me. They point towards the mountain that's further away from them. They know that I'm going for the Cave of Teeth. There's
Right.
probably been some other white guy who
Right.
showed up there
Keep going.
and was like,
Yeah.
what's going on? Why does the trail lead right to your
Cave of
house?
Teeth. Right.
Yeah,
right,
so
right.
so I'm walking by this mountain, and I'm in tall grass now, just kind of looking for any sign that's going to help me find this Cave of Teeth. And eventually I find these steps that have been kind of grown over by the tall grass, but I found them, and I walk up these steps up the foothills of this mountain to the entrance to the cave. And the entrance to the cave is about standard doorway size, right?
Yeah.
Completely pitch black in there. I can't see what's going on, and I'm getting kind of terrified because I don't know if there's a bear in there. Even if it wasn't a bear, say it was like a deer, right?
Yeah.
If there's a deer in there, a deer could really fuck me up. Because like if I startle the wrong animal, I don't have animal strength. I'm just a human. They'll just whoop your ass. They don't like you can't beat a wild animal in a wrestling match.
Right.
But I decided to go in. I got my cell phone light on, so I'm going back into this cave, and it keeps getting narrower and narrower. I'm ducking my head now, and then I'm bending over, and then it's going upwards at about a 30-degree slant up into the mountain, and then it takes a U-turn, and I'm going to have to crawl if I'm going to go any further. And I'm thinking about turning back, and I turn my head and look up this U-turn, and there's a light at the top of it, a light shining. So I decided, it's like, well, I'll come this far, I guess I'll crawl up there. So I crawl up there, and I'm in a hole. Once I get to there's a hole in the rock face of this cliff, right? And it's about the size of a standard room, like maybe like a 10 by 10 little area that's in the face of this cliff.
Yeah.
And in there's these little containers full of teeth. Like
Just like people's teeth, like animals' teeth, or what?
animals'
Just-
teeth, people's teeth, all sorts of different teeth, hundreds of them. There's 3 big containers, just full of these teeth, and
Whoa.
I'm just like, what the hell have I stumbled on, man? And there's nobody there to share it with. There's no, like, this is just my experience. I'm probably 100 kilometers from town, probably 60 kilometers off the tourist track, and I have no idea what the hell is going on. I took some pictures.
Wow.
I looked at it, and I decided to get the hell out of there and go back home, you know. And when I got home, I was telling some of the local guys about it, and they never heard of the Cave of Teeth. People from the Long Prabon,
Whoa.
they never heard of it. Yeah, and they're like, I don't know. And these were guys that I had been asking for advice on where to go to, like some local guys that knew.
So you just
about
stumbled
the
upon it.
area.
You just saw a sign for it.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had a map that I picked up off of a side of the road vendor. Then it was kind of like a dated map, and I wouldn't be surprised if not another person goes there for the next couple of years.
Wow.
Yeah, something.
Those experiences, man. It's so
Something.
crazy whenever you go and you experience something like that by yourself, and you're like, what is, no one is around to make any sense of it, by not even the like your hands making motions to try and get the language or try and get a message across. It's like, wow, man, what to think of a Cave of Teeth.
Let me look up something real quick, Claudio. I want to look up the name of this charity because there's a problem going on in Laos that was really touching to me. They've just been ravaged by war over there, and there's a lot of mines, right? Like unexploded mines and shrapnel and grenades and bombs that have dropped there. And what happens is there is a serious problem with all of this material, all of this old metal from the war has a collector value. So these people that live off of $100 a month,
Right.
if they can find one of these bombs or one of these mines or any war memorabilia, can really have a positive uptick in their life and their economy.
Right.
So what they do is these families will go out and purchase a cheap metal detector, a $10 metal detector, and go off into the jungle and just start looking for anything that they can find to try to collect and to try to sell. But the problem is that a lot of these mines are unexploded. They're still active. These things are alive, and almost a person a day either dies or gets mangled by these mines.
Oh.
And so the Laos government, sponsored by, with help from the United States government and countries in Europe and Asia, has a force that's trained to go out there, and they take care of thousands of acres every year.
Wow.
And hopefully one day it'll stop happening. Like, they go in there and they're trained on how to deal with it safely.
Whoa.
And how to disarm the situation and hopefully like save the lives of these people.
Jeez, man.
So let me just allow me to look it up on my phone. That way anyone who's interested or touched by it. I was quite a bit.
It was really interesting when I heard Bobby telling me about him going down to Southeast Asia. I was traveling last September, like I was mentioning earlier, and I was in South Africa. And at the hostel that I was staying at, I made great connection with this Dutch gentleman, not from the Netherlands, of course, from Amsterdam, and he was about to embark on a 6-month vacation, which is pretty crazy to think about someone taking a 6-month vacation. But the business that he was a sports psychologist. His other 2 employees who he managed and had hired were both women who had both gotten pregnant. And so it turned out that they had to go through their pregnancy phases right at the same time. And so he says, well, if they're getting time off, I'm going to take some time off. So he went down to Southeast Asia and spent time in Laos, in Malaysia, in Vietnam. I believe he did also go to Thailand and a couple other places. But so when you told me about, going, I was really interested and wanted to get you in here, Bobby, to not just talk about your trip to Thailand, to Vietnam, to Laos, but also to some of the other places that you've gone, and get into the traveling aspect of that part of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just harp on that one bit more. So it's called the Halo Trust. Has a pretty reliable charity that anyone who's interested could check out. And I mean, a little bit of money goes a long way in that country. You know, so making a little donation
goes a long way, right?
Could save somebody's life. It could be $20, $50 for you, and it could end up saving somebody's life on the other side of the world. It was about the situation I've seen where it was something that you could take a direct action and for sure make a difference in people's lives. Right. Like, a lot of things get convoluted or twisted, or they're not so simple.
So we don't realize the effect sometimes. Being in this country, the effect that $5, $10, $15, $20, even $50 or $100 has on a situation in another place in this world, and how much it can immensely affect someone. I was having a conversation with someone just the other day about something I hear a lot in a podcast, which is this guy named Justin Wren, who goes down to the Congo, and he works with a foundation that he started to build wells and helps combat.
Big guy, fighter. I like that guy.
That's right.
Yeah, sweetheart.
But remind people, what's the name of that foundation again you were talking about? It's called the Halo Foundation?
The Halo Trust.
The Halo Trust.
Yeah, that's right.
People can definitely go check that out if you want to help out, man.
So let me ask you a question, Claudio. So when I am traveling, people are constantly asking me, they say, why do you think Americans don't travel the world as much as other people that have opportunities, that have that sort of economic advantage to be able to afford to do stuff like this? And a lot of Americans don't really take advantage of it. A lot of people might never make it out of the country, or might very rarely make it out of the country, or might only make it to a couple different resorts in their life.
I don't know about you, Bobby, but I remember growing up and never really having an opportunity through schooling, through television. Really, I mean, movies was kind of the only opportunity where you got to learn or see about different cultures. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, growing up in the States, I don't think, at least obviously, and we're speaking from our experience and our generation, I don't think, traveling or recognizing other cultures was ever on the list of priorities. And not to diminish what beautiful patriotism is instilled into us from our fellow countrymen that raise us as teachers or just as people in the community. It also has kind of a negative effect, I think, on Americans thinking that America is the greatest country in the world, that no other country is great. You know what I'm saying? And like people, sadly, this is just my opinion and my observation, is that they think, why am I going to go somewhere else when I'm in the best country in the world? And that's a sad reality, because something I was talking to you about before the podcast was, speaking to the reality that you learn more about yourself by going outside the country and realizing how similar we are as human beings all around the world, as well as how everyone is in love with their own culture. And so it's natural for us to have patriotism and feel like America is the best. But at least here, that sort of patriotism, as well as us being this big war, mongering country, we kind of sort of put in our heads, first of all, that we're the greatest, we're the best, and we never have, like I said earlier, that opportunity to fall in love or see something interesting about another culture. It's like you are looked at as someone like off, like someone weird if you want to go like to France and go study French, you know what I mean? Or like go to Italy and like, you want to go learn how to be an Italian chef or something like that.
I've definitely had that experience in my life where people are like, what are you doing?
I know, right?
Why do you want to do that?
Why
what are
would
you talking about?
What is over there?
Why do you want to go and see these other parts of the world? You could just you could have spent that money to buy house here. Or you could,
they have documentaries about that. You can just watch it on Netflix. It's like, right. But people don't realize the effect, not just on your soul, on your awareness, on your worldliness. You know what I'm saying? It makes you a more wiser person when you come back into the country and you don't look at someone with an accent and be like, oh, where are you from? It's like, no, like you step out of this country, you go a couple miles north or south and you're in a place where all of a sudden your accent is looked at as funny, And so that experience of like getting out, man, is I don't know, man. From what I've gathered from traveling is that people in other countries, they admire all of the other cultures around the world. And so they seek that opportunity to go travel as an opportunity to learn about these things that interest them, as well as about themselves, which is ultimately the biggest treasure that we get from traveling and getting to know who we are, in ways that you wouldn't get to know if you just stayed here and were in the comfortable situations,
I get kind of two types of reactions when I talk about the type of traveling that I've done, and one is that I'm some sort of weirdo or some sort of person that's into fringe culture and not following the mainstream, and the other one is that I'm some sort of hero, or like people look up to me in some way and be like, oh man, I would love to go do something like that.
I wish I can get out and do that.
Oh yeah, that is so cool. And I don't really think it's either. Like I don't think that it's so like I'm doing anything very important or special to the world for me to go out and go see anything. And I definitely don't think that I'm some sort of lunatic. So for the entire history of the human planet, it has never been easier, as far as we know, to go and see these different parts of the world.
You're totally right. And be educated on the experience of going there. Yeah, it's like back in the day when you travel, you wouldn't know anything about the place until you got there. About the books, the books and the things that you got to learn about the place. But nowadays, you're right. We're more able to travel and see the world than ever.
It does change your perspective on you when you start to see that other countries have patriotism too, and and I'm a proud American. I believe that we live in the best country on the planet and the best country in the history of the planet. Really, I'm super, super proud to be from here, and not that I don't think that we have problems, but when you look at the history of any other empire, they all have problems, and I'm just
without a doubt.
Yeah, and I'm happy to be here.
If I may ask you, that sense of patriotism, not for you or for me or for many other people, but definitely for a select few that are extra patriotic, gives them that sense of like, why would they go to another place? Like, why would they want to go be the stranger or the foreigner? You know?
Well, a big thing that I believe plays into the whole reason why we don't travel a lot is and I'm not really sure where it comes from or why, but there's a culture of fear that's building up here in America, totally right. And there's a lot of of things that I feel are just sort of irrational fears that people have, and we're starting to really fear each other and get isolated in different ways. But whenever you talk about a different part of the world, especially if you're a female, but even as a male, people will try to scare you into not doing it. They'll try to be like, oh man, you'll get a disease if you go to this region, and if you go to this region, you'll get robbed, and if you go to this region,
you'll get stabbed,
you could get killed, and they hate you over there, and in my experience, it's just not true really anywhere.
You don't see any of that.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, people get robbed.
Oh, without a doubt.
People get robbed here in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Come on, that's what I'm saying.
People get robbed here. Like, people will be like, don't you feel like, don't you get scared going there? And I'm like, I come from one of the most dangerous cities in the country.
That's right. It has been in the past, couple of years, like in the top 3 most dangerous cities in America. How funny is that, man?
Yeah, and we just live here, from here. For sure, you start to understand, and we've had experiences where people were into sketchy things. I was into sketchy things. There was different people. Different people make mistakes, and it's a tough place. And I don't love everything about Albuquerque, but I do love Albuquerque, and I'm always hoping the best for it. But
man, I mean, I have to say that sense of fear is also something that I think is the reason why people see what you do and see it like it's heroic. Like, oh, wow, man, I can't believe you did that, Because they're too scared to imagine themselves doing it, And it's so funny because I get that feeling not of heroism, but of like people being like, you're doing something, like you achieved something huge in just going to this place and going out and seeing that part of the world and exploring it, But really, I always emphasize to people that like, yo, you can do that too. Like people are always would tell me stuff about when I go to New Orleans. They're like, I love seeing the pictures of when you go. Like, I would dream of going there one day.
That's so funny.
I'm like, it's not that hard. Just put gas in your car. Keep putting gas in your car and keep driving like east, and you'll make it there.
Yeah. It's like, can you save up $400?
That's what I'm saying.
A round trip ticket?
It's not.
Make this happen.
Yeah, man. It's like people spend so much money on other things that they don't think about, and like you said earlier, it's like we have the capacity nowadays more to travel and to see the whole world than ever before, man. So why not,
So there's these fears that people live with. One thing that I'm noticing is that, so hitchhiking has like disappeared in our culture. It's so taboo to ever hitchhike or to pick up a hitchhiker.
Right.
Most people are going to think you're insane. My dad used to let me hitchhike around the mountains when I was a teenager. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When you were going to Roosevelt, or when you were in high school?
When I was in middle school and high school, I would hitchhike to go play basketball. And I only ever had to get out of 2 people's car, man. Everyone was helping me out there. So.
But wait, hold on. You got to tell me about those 2 people.
All right. So there's 2 different cars that I had to get out of.
Okay.
The first one was a couple of perverts picked me up when I was maybe 14 years old. A couple of lonely old gay perverts, and two of them, yeah, two men, maybe around the age of 50.
Oh, yeah.
And they picked me up, and I could tell that these guys were creepy and they were into me. And one of them tried to like start rubbing my neck, and I just slapped his hand and I said, "Hey, look, man.
Oh, shit.
I appreciate you guys giving me a ride, but you can't touch me. Yeah, it's not okay." And I'm a 14-year-old man calling out these 50-year-old men on their bullshit. I'm a 14-year-old boy, not a man, But but it taught me a lot about the world. It taught me like I had to be aware of certain things. Like there was rules that I followed while I was doing this. I was like, I never told anybody where I was going to. I told them what direction I was going in. So that way, if I needed to get out, I could say, "This is where I'm going."
Yep.
Right. And I just kind of being aware and being aware of what's going on with people. And then the only other person that I ever had to, and I literally jumped in hundreds of different cars.
Yeah.
And the only other person I ever had to jump out of their car was some lady who wouldn't stop talking about how bad of parents I have.
For letting you hitchhike? What a bitch.
But, something bad could have happened to me. But I really believe that we're living in like this paranoid culture and just this culture of fear where it's like there's certain growth processes that you go through as you are allowed to take risks and allowed to mess up and it allows you to understand the world in a better way. And if you're always prevented from making any mistakes, then those are lost opportunities for growth. And so maybe letting a teenage boy hitchhike around, maybe it's too much, but I don't know. A lot of these parents are just living in this world of fear where it's like, there's a pedophile everywhere. There's a pedophile down the street, and he's trying to get you right out of the yard, so I got to keep my eye on you all the time. And then when I was a kid, that wasn't the case. My parents didn't have my eye on me all the time. We were out running around, and I think the freedom that I had as the freedom that my parents allowed me as a kid, or maybe they didn't have control or whatever, like the freedom that I experienced in my young life has allowed me to be more free thinking as an adult. Like not that other people, not that I'm some sort of sage or that other people are trapped, but I just have seen situations where there's been a lot of resistance. So my first attempt to go travel, I was going to go to India as an 18-year-old boy, and people were like, "What are you talking about? Go to college. You got to go to college." But I just felt in my heart, I was like, man, I don't want to go to college. I don't know what I'm doing here. It costs a lot of money. I don't know what I'm studying.
So back up. So this is 2008.
2008,
You graduated from Manzano High School.
Yeah.
And you were about to go out into the world, and people are obviously, as they all are, like, you got to go into the next thing. You're preparing. You're in high school. You got to get ready for college. Now you got to get ready for the real world.
Preparing for college,
right? Whatever. That's what they say, right? It's like you're always getting ready for the next step. But so, as opposed to doing the college thing, you decided to go to India. You had an opportunity with your cousin.
I was in college. Oh,
so you'd already
University
gone.
of New Mexico. I went there for it. It took me all of 8 weeks to
find out you didn't want to be there.
Yeah, I was barely allowed there after 8 weeks. I was.
What do you mean you were barely allowed?
Well, I don't think I was passing any of my classes, Claudio. But
they still let you allow. They allow you.
Yeah. They would have let me be there, but I knew it wasn't right for me. And after 8 weeks, I disenrolled from my classes and. Just started saving up money to go to India, and during that time, a lot of people were calling me to be like, "You're making such a mistake. They're so worried about you. All this bad stuff is going to happen. You're going to get sick. You're going to get robbed." And myself.
So hold on. So you were at UNM 8 weeks in, and then the opportunity comes up.
The opportunity comes up,
and you went, and people were like, "What are you doing?"
I took it. It took me about another month before I was able to save up the money that I needed to get over there.
Right.
Really. So I bought $800 round trip ticket.
Okay.
To India, and in 4 months that I was there, try to guess a monetary amount. 4 months. How much did I spend? I'll give you a hint. I had $100 stolen from me.
Oh,
all right.
How much?
$600.
Oh.
And the $100 that was stolen from me is included in the $600 that I spent there in 4 months. So, and the education that money provided me, it changed my life. It changed my life in drastic ways. So I showed up into Delhi. I was supposed to meet my cousin who had been traveling around India, but I didn't get to. I bought a ticket into Delhi, and he was in. Total opposite side of the country. He's in Tamil Nadu at the time. So
but he was the reason you went there, right? Like he had a business opportunity and you were going over there to go work with him and help him with the business or something like that?
Yeah, he was starting a small Indian tourism company for like catered tours for European and American people that wanted a specific kind of a less generic India trip, because there's this golden temple of India that you fly into Delhi and you go see the temples in Delhi. Yeah. You go to Agra, which is where the Taj Mahal is. And then you go to Jaipur and do some shopping and go see the temples there. And then you're out. And people feel... But India is one of the most diverse and vast countries in the world. They have second highest population, 27 different states. Only 13 of them speak Hindi as their language. The other 14 each have their own state language that they speak.
Yeah.
It's a collection of so many different kingdoms and palaces and armies and forts, and such an amazing history of that place. Probably the deepest history of any region in the world, and it was all just collected into one country by the British in the last couple centuries, and then split up between Muslim and Hindu states. So in India they call India Hindustan. Mm-hmm. So there's Pakistan, Hindustan, and Bangladesh, and that all used to be British India.
Yeah.
And they got split in the 1900s. So I mean, it's just this amazing place, and that was my cousin's dream was to allow people more opportunity to see how amazing this country is. Because a lot of people here feel like, why would I leave my own country? I haven't even seen what I want to see here, you know?
Right.
And in India, I feel that here, like, all the time. Honestly, Claudio, I've never been to New Orleans. Like, I'm one of the people that tells you, dude, I would love to go there.
Yeah.
I've never been to Austin, Texas. I've never been to Savannah, Georgia. I've never even been to Florida. I'm going in next month. But yeah. I'm excited to do more traveling around the U.S., but there's not really anything quite like leaving your culture and experiencing something that's completely different. When I landed in Delhi as an 18-year-old who had very, very little travel experience. So the summer before that, I was living in New York City for the first time, working as a...
Right. Bring this up, because this is another thing I wanted you to say. So you also went that summer of 2008, right?
Summer of 2008, I graduated and I went to New York, and I got a job working for a company called Bike and Roll, and I was working in a bicycle shop and giving bicycle tours around the Central Park and Manhattan and Brooklyn Bridges. And
where were you living then?
The Greenway. I was living with my great uncle, who had a rent-control apartment on the Upper West Side in a very historic apartment building called the Ansonia.
Sick.
Great man, Uncle Lou Marvin. So I was living there and giving tours, and I remember coming from New Mexico, coming from the country. You and I grew up in the same neighborhood. Coming from the country in New Mexico, going to New York City was
totally different world, right?
I was shocked, man. I couldn't even believe it. I was such a little country bumpkin. I couldn't, trying to figure out how to fill up my Metro card so I could get on the subway. Trying to figure out what the rules were, which direction these different buses are going to go. It was just a new world to me, man. I'd taken the bus a little bit around Albuquerque.
Right.
But I was not ready for that type of speed, that type of pace. And...
right, being in transit like that.
And and it shocked me. And when I got back to New York from India, my flight went from Delhi to New York City. It felt like New York, after being in India for 4 months, felt like a beach resort in Cancun with how calm it was, dude. It was like India is on a whole nother level of intensity for what this... just the speed and the pace and what's going on and all the people and smells and colors and directions and 1.2 billion people, something like this. Zero traffic lights. Well, so everyone's just going, dude. They go all the time. There's no stopping them. So while I'm doing that, I get to India and I'm just scared to death. I feel like all of a sudden I'm hanging out in that part of that Star Wars scene where Jabba the Hutt lives. That was like what it felt like to me. I was like, what? And as an 18-year-old, I don't know if I met many 18-year-olds that were more cocky and more arrogant than I was at that age, which kind of was God bless it. It probably allowed me to go have that experience. Maybe if I didn't have that level of arrogance, I would have let the people trying to scare me out of doing it, But I got there and I got scared shitless, man. I was like, holy crap. And my cousin wasn't going to be able to meet up with me for another month and a half or 2 months.
Wow.
So
you're just in a whole nother world.
Well, it'd be like, well, my cousin. It'd be like if some people from India were like, well, I'm going to go meet up with my cousin, but your cousin's in Dallas and you fly into New York City, And then I just had to handle it. And there's this whole, this story's this is my favorite story in my life right here. So there's this whole tourism industry in India that's just set up to try to like take as much money from you as they can.
Yeah.
So say if you're going, now if I were to buy something like this speaker that I'm speaking into, and if I were to go into an Indian shop, I would know that if they told me that it's 4,000 rupees, that I could get it for 400. You know?
Damn, like that.
Well, I bet. Yeah. I bet I could, you know?
Yeah.
And, but some people, they just say, well, 4,000. Here's a 4,000. So you can't blame them for trying, you know? Sure. They might as well try 5,000 next time, you know? Whatever it is. But I just got caught up in this trap and I couldn't figure out how to get out of it. I had a guy following me around that I wasn't happy about this situation. Wasn't able to get the prices on hotels that I knew was available. I wasn't able to get find the place where I should be paying for. And I didn't like they are going after these white people because they have so much money.
Right.
I didn't have so much money, Claudio. I was there. I had under 50. So after I bought that ticket, I had under $1,000 in my bank account to try to make this whole thing work. Right.
You were there for 4 months. I
was there for 4 months. Wow. I was planning on being there for 4 months. Yeah. So I was stressing out about this money. I was like, man, I got to figure out how to stop getting ripped off quick. And I couldn't figure it out. I had no idea. And it sounds kind of pathetic to me now, looking back at it. But at the time, I just couldn't figure it out. And I think it would have been challenging for a lot of people.
Right.
And so I went to some different places, and I ended up trying to get out of where I was at. I was in Agra, which is the Taj Mahal place, right on that tourist track, and I just wanted to get out of there because I couldn't escape this tourist trap that I was in. And I bought the cheapest train ticket I could get on to the next place. And it turns out that there's this thing in India called the general class ticket, and it's only going to cost $1. But the thing is there's no capacity for how many people they'll stick on this train. There's no seats, there's no nothing. Right. Everybody gets on. It doesn't even matter if you want to bring your livestock on. The livestock gets on. Whatever. So I ended up
sat next to a cow or a goat.
I ended up sitting above the seats on a luggage rack that had a slant on it, and I had my back against just an iron bar, and sitting there for 13 hours.
You were sitting on a luggage rack.
Sitting on a luggage rack.
A very sturdy one.
Leaning against a bar, just sitting on a metal rack on my butt, sort of in like a squatting position, and with a backpack in my lap. And I was sitting there for 13 hours. And while this is going on,
wow,
I got a case of Delhi belly. but there's no bathroom that's accessible. And I might lose my seat if I got up and went to the bath. So I just sit there for 13 hours with this Delhi belly going on, and I got a guy. I'm taking up probably about like 3 cubic feet of space, and I got a guy who's rubbing shoulders with me on my left side and a guy who's rubbing shoulders with me on my right side. And after about 8 hours, I'm to the point where I'm about to crack. I've been in India now for about 2 weeks, and I'm so angry.
Yeah.
This is maybe the angriest that I've ever been. There's just like fire building up inside of me. And I'm thinking, my cousin's name is Steve. I'm thinking like, fuck Steve. Steve's trying to destroy my life. Like, I don't know why the hell I listened to him. I'm pissed off at Steve. And then I'm like, and fuck this country. Fuck this place. Fuck these people. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get the hell out of here. As soon as I get out of here, I'm buying my flight back home. And I'm not going to deal with this shit. And I don't want to be here. This has been a miserable experience for me. And in the middle of this anger that I'm feeling, this like deep, deep anger, I know I look at the guy next to me who I'm kind of just been ignoring, and I see his feet, and I see that he's only got 5 toes total.
Across both feet.
5 toes across both feet. Yeah, so he's got both his big toes, and one foot has got 2 accompanying toes, and one foot's only got 1.
Whoa.
And it's obvious to me that this man hasn't had medical care in his life, right? Like he hasn't had strong medical care in his life, and looking at him, and he's kind of ignoring me. I've been ignoring him. It's just he's talking to the guy next to him, and they're laughing about something. They're speaking in Hindi. I can't understand what they're saying, but they're laughing about something. And I started looking around, and I'm surrounded in this little tiny space, maybe like 100 square feet of space. There's probably 35 people in there, and none of them are having as bad a time as me. For sure, there's a lot of people telling stories, laughing, talking with each other, just kind of making their best out of this situation. And I got this sense that like the only thing that was making me feel so angry was that I thought that I deserved better than this, that this situation was too drastic, you know. But this might be the situation for the majority of people on planet Earth, you know. Like, this is a situation for the majority of the people in India. This is the situation for the majority of people in Africa. This is the situation for the majority of people in China and in Bangladesh and in Indonesia, where the majority of the population of the planet is there's not a lot of wealth. And just kind of it changed my life just in an instant.
Wow.
I went from being furious to grateful, and just like that. You know, like all of a sudden I just recognized my blessings, and instead of being like a little spoiled bitch about the situation, like why did I feel I deserved better than these people? Because I came from America? Because I didn't do any work more than them. I didn't do anything to earn my life that should allow me to sit in a train that's more comfortable than these people, right?
Right.
And it changed my life like that, man. And it really has never been the same since, honestly. Like I can't say I've been like the best philanthropist that I've ever met, but I do think about my life in a different way, where I recognize my blessings pretty consistently, and I don't spend a lot of time comparing myself to people or things that I don't have, or things that I wish I had, or like looking at celebrities and being like, man, I should be a celebrity, or some sort of jealousy about something. Just a different attitude of like blessed and gratefulness. And right at that day, dude, I started laughing with the guys around me, having conversations. A lot of people in India speak English. One guy offered for me to marry his daughter. Right there on that train, once I started talking to people. Yeah, man, it was a good time.
Was he sitting up there with you, or was he down below you?
He was the guy that was sitting next to the guy without the toes.
Wow.
So the guy that was sitting next to the guy without the toes, I gave the guy, they're super, super kind to me, man. So like I gave the guy without the toes, I gave him a hug and just kind of like, I told him I wanted to meet him and stuff like that, and he didn't really speak English, but other people were translated for me. And then the guy next to him spoke English, and that guy, he whipped out his wallet and showed me a picture of his family, and he was like, "Would you want to marry my daughter?" Which it was just, wow. Sometimes, man, people are just too kind. It was funny. Very. It's just another situation where I felt like extremely blessed. You know, like of course I didn't end up marrying that man's daughter, but it was a powerful situation. Just recognizing like
we're gonna take one pause real quick. Okay, and we're back. So something else that I wanted to ask you about, Bobby, was obviously like having you on this podcast was something I wanted to do because I admire all of my friends that have that traveler spirit, because like we were talking about before about people being scared. The reality is it's a scary thing going out there by yourself, you know what I'm saying, to a whole nother place where maybe you won't be with people that can help you translate to what the language is there, as well as like you just don't have any idea of what the experience is going to be like. So that is something scary that even those of us that choose to go out and travel to those crazy places, we all deal with that as well, But at least my question that I wanted to pose to you, in having been as traveled from graduating high school and going to New York and then going to India and just, when did that itch start for you? I mean, was that young? Did your family and you take any like family vacations, or was it seeing movies? Like, what sparked your interest? You know what I'm saying?
I have had this. I feel like everybody deals with fear in different ways, right? And for me, and it's still a big fear of mine, even though I'm learning it's like inevitable. But I have this deep fear of regret. So I got this. I understand that from my understanding, I believe like that I'm gonna die one day, and then that's the end of what I know. That's the last bit that I know of what happens, right? Like I very agnostic in that sense. Like I don't really have very many beliefs as to what happens to Bobby once he dies, right?
Sure.
But I know for sure I'm gonna die.
Of course. So death and taxes.
So then you get to that point and you start to feel like, man, like that's something that's on my mind sometimes. Is like I got a tough time passing up opportunities or like things that I want to do. I try to get them done. Or whenever I see something that seems like something that I should definitely do, or I might regret it, sometimes I take a risk in order to get it done.
Right.
And sometimes that leads me down into some places where maybe I shouldn't have been, dude. Like sometimes I remember when I was 18 years old, I had a talk with you, and I was like, Claudio, I think I want to try to do heroin. And you were like, Bobby, tell me why you want to do heroin. And it was really kind of the same thing. It's like I want to experience everything that this life has to offer. And I knew that heroin was kind of in my mind at the time, and still this extreme like epitome of this world of the drug scene.
Yeah.
And there's all these people that know about it and that know what that world is like, and I wanted to be one of them. I never experienced it, and thank God, because some things in life are just more powerful than the human willpower, you know, and heroin ends up killing a lot of people. But it's just kind of like this idea that I've had towards life of like wanting to experience the edges of life, to not leave a lot of tiles unturned, you know. Right. So I'm not sure what happened with world travel when I really got interested in it. I can't really remember. I think it's been something that's been a part of me my whole life. But sometimes in life I have you can't see the whole world really. It's impossible. So you could dedicate your whole life to it and not do it.
Right.
So you gotta be able to find a medium that you're comfortable with. You could be like, so the idea is to like have a meaningful life now at this point. And so anymore, I'm not sure that I'm gonna going and being a tourist in these different places and checking out like take a picture of something amazing, go experience someone's different culture. It means a lot to me, but it doesn't mean the same thing that it meant to me before, and I'm recognizing that on these different trips. Anymore, I would love to be of more help and service to people in these different places. So in my life in the future, I hope to be able to, no matter if I stay in one place or if I don't, I'd hope to be able to service these people more. But I think that's kind of what happened that kind of lit that fire in me. And you know, whenever I was in college, people, I just kind of recognized pretty early that college wasn't what it used to be. So these parents are all telling their kids to go to college and to get a degree. But I knew, just based on like reading newspapers and websites and magazines, that college degree didn't mean a good job anymore. So it didn't make sense to really like, when you look at the student debt situation and how many people get buckled down with student debt into a job that they're not going to be able to,
of course,
to pay that off with, or like their degree doesn't qualify them for a high-paying job, but they took a lot of money for them to get that degree. It just could be a mistake in a lot of situations. So I think I wasn't that afraid of dropping out of college when I didn't know what I wanted to do and wasn't inspired to do it, and I was more afraid of committing myself to this debt and this idea of that I would have to pay this off for a long time, and it might take my whole life, and I might never experience these different things that I wanted to do.
That's interesting, man.
Yeah.
It almost catapulted you out of school.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's like the catalyst was like the stress of the debt, and like you especially see it at college campuses when the credit card companies have like little stands set up for you to, oh, come get a shirt. You'll get a little football and sign up for the credit card.
Well,
it's like that's what's up. Come get you some debt.
Well, it's an amazing thing looking back at myself as like a young man, like 10 years older than I was back then.
Yeah,
and I'm still a young man, but.
We just had our 10-year reunion, man.
Yeah, 10-year reunion. And fortunately, I didn't get to make it, but hopefully, if anyone from Monsanto High School, 08, 07, whoever is listening to it, just know that I wish the best for you and I miss you. But
I hope Bobby will be there for
But I didn't have... I'll be there for the 20. I really regretted not making the 10-year. But there were some parts of me that were very, very stupid. Like that whole heroin part that I was just telling you about is like a very naive way to think about the world. But then there's also parts of me that understood the world in a way that other kids didn't.
But man, that sense of awareness that you were speaking about earlier, in terms of when you were hitchhiking and getting in the cars and stuff like that was something you learned to tune into, and you learned to grow that muscle. To be able to become aware of the situations as they happened, as well as in hindsight, looking at what happened, how you reacted, and how you can grow from it and learn and grow to be where you're at, at 28 as opposed to 18. And I'm sure when we're 38, we're going to say what idiots we were at 30 or at 28. It's like, that's just going to be, I hope, the evolution of our thought process I mean, of course, it's like, science says that our organisms change every 7 years, and so, I mean, change is going to be inevitable. But what you were talking about in terms of experiencing it all back then, especially like as someone who's wanted to experience everything their whole life, it is a perspective. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's something that you tune into as a kid of life, of like falling in love with the moment somehow, just like every now and then, like every couple months or however long it takes you in between, but just like totally tuning in, like putting your feet on the ground and just like checking in with like yourself and being like, I'm right here in this situation, in this place, experiencing this, all of those things. And like doing that, as well as like having the eagerness to want to experience everything, man. I mean, it can both be beautiful and amazing and awakening for people, and it can also be very dark and dangerous for people, because I mean, there's all kinds of sides. I mean, I don't like the duality thing that's put about there is good and bad, and especially whenever it's brought into the drugs, hard drugs or psychedelics. I mean, obviously with heroin and cocaine and stuff like that, there are uses for those, and in small doses, I mean, they are used medically. It's like cocaine, liquid cocaine is absolutely used in the medical profession. But the experience of wanting to live all of these things that are spoken about, that are written about, that are sung about, that movies depict, something natural. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I remember watching movies as a kid and like getting so inspired after the movie and wanting to do whatever that person was doing. You know what I'm saying? Like watching Beautiful Mind and wanting to be just like John Nash and like writing fucking, equations on my window. You know what I'm saying? Just trying to be smart, just like it's being so inspired by what capacity we have as human beings, and, experiencing, reality as opposed to acknowledging a spiritual practice, at least for me in my own experience, man, is what opened me up to psychedelics. And that experience of wanting to experience everything, it's like it's like traveling outside in the world, but psychedelics in some way for me were traveling inside of yourself and inside of your own, mental, spiritual, psychological self. And
something happened on psychedelics to people, and it's completely, if people haven't dabbled with psychedelics, and they probably just have a complete misconception as to what it's about and what goes on and what they think. Like I've just heard so many different things. Like one time a friend of mine, I was going to take some acid. And this girl tells me, she's like, isn't it like if you take it 7 times, you're insane?
You go crazy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Of course.
And there's just all these different. It's like what happens? So 6 times you're fine, and then on the 7th time you're just out there, and you'll never be able to come back. Yeah.
We lost him. Bobby's gone. He just stayed that way. He's out in the woods now. Lives with no clothes.
I mean, I definitely don't. I definitely think that you have to be responsible anytime that you're using drugs.
And I don't think they're for everyone. You know, I used to experience, you know, psychedelics in the first couple years of experiencing them, and would say I think everyone needs to see these things. But now, I mean, just a couple of years later of having experienced psychedelics and being a quote unquote somewhat experienced psychonaut, I realized that it is not for everyone. You know, not everyone should go do it. I mean, sometimes when people have psychotic episodes, doing psychedelics opens that door up for them more so, and it does, you know, put people into bad places. And so that sense of what people are talking about people, you know, took too many acid trips and they went out, or they ate too many, you know, they took too many tablets or strips, you know. But the reality is that like
you can for sure fry your brain with too much acid. I feel like I've seen that done.
Too much of anything is not good, right?
Yeah.
Everything in moderation, even moderation, man. But what I wanted to say is that the experience for me of going into psychedelics was one of seeking spiritual experience, as opposed to wanting to just go and experience this drug because it was a drug out there that people spoke about seeing crazy colors and seeing the trees melt or talk to you.
So what was your introduction to psychedelics, Claudio?
I mean, I definitely had heard about people doing psychedelics when we were in middle school. You know what I'm saying? Like eating mushrooms and stuff like that, and you know, smoking pot. But I mean, my first experience with pot was I smoked weed when I was a junior at Manzano.
Okay.
I smoked it with Cole Vertikoff, actually. I'm sorry to call Cole Vertikoff out, but me and Cole had, you know, we had attempted to smoke weed, and our friends, you know, smoked us on some marijuana that was just way too strong, and, you know, smoked us out in a way that made us just cough, and I threw up. So it was just like the worst experience in the world for me, and I never wanted to go back down that road.
That's funny.
You know, and so I was just like, forget it. I'm not, you know, and I don't want anything to do with that. And then a couple years later, I think when I was a junior not in high school, but a junior in college, university, a drummer friend that I was playing with turned me onto it again, and I got into it. And shortly after that, someone that was close to me at that time had given me half a bag of mushrooms that they had bought.
Wow, okay.
And came and listened to me and that drummer that had turned me onto the pot, and a bass player friend of mine who I had a trio with, listened to his jam. And he had a little bit of, you know, the mushrooms, and I had a little bit of the mushrooms.
Okay.
And started playing. And just like while I was playing with the trio, the effect just like slowly came on. You know what I'm saying?
Were you able to keep playing your guitar while the
Man, I remember feeling like
because it can be disorienting.
Well, for sure. I mean, you just start chewing, like you obviously. I mean, I took a very small little bit, so it took, you know, I don't know how long, 40 minutes, 30 minutes. I mean, it was like we were playing through songs and then just writing stuff and then just kind of going in, you know, and they were just like, oh, whenever you know, go, just go, you know. And I just remember feeling like the music, like looking down at the guitar, like you know, my left hand on the guitar, and I was like, the music is coming out of my fingertips through the guitar and being amplified out. Like, this is crazy. And like the more and more I thought about it and looked at my guitar, like, and looked at my right hand strumming and would look back at my left hand, I would slowly start seeing the veins in my left hand build up to the guitar, like to the neck of the guitar, as if it was like sending the juices, you know what I'm saying? Sending the flow.
Man, that's amazing.
It was quite an experience, you know. And man, you know, we experienced that, and we kind of played until the end of that jam, and then I was like, all right, guys, I need to chill out, you know. And then my friend took me home. You know, we went home and chilled out, and then that was around like December of 2012, and I was watching over a house, and and I had the rest of that bag of mushrooms. I mean, not the rest of it, but I had a big chunk, a sizable amount. As a lot of people refer to psychedelics. You
don't ever weigh these mushrooms before you take them?
I didn't. But, I know that people talk about 5 grams being the dosage. That is like that's a really deep, profound.
I think it really
experience.
depends on body size, but yeah,
You're
5
right.
grams is
Oh,
a lot,
yeah, no, to a 90-pound woman, that is going to really do some stuff, that is going to be dangerous.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I knew that I wanted to have a lot because I'd learned earlier that year about dimethyltryptamine, about DMT. That was probably the first psychedelic outside of marijuana that I'd learned about that I really wanted to experience. But I did about over a year, maybe about 13, 14 months of research on the drug and just kind of allowed myself to chill out and think about doing it before I actually did it. And so mushrooms were the thing that I did before DMT.
Okay.
And after that first experience, this next experience that I had a really profound experience at the house that I was watching, and felt like I was having a language deciphered to me through gibberish, but it was a language that I felt like was continuing. And the only way that I remember describing it to my friends afterwards was like listening to, classical composers' variations on a theme. For non-musicians out there, it's basically a theme, a line of music, maybe a couple bars that a composer writes, and then after he's written it, he goes through all of the different possibilities of varieties with that theme that he could write. So he'll have an idea, initial theme, and then he'll have 20 different variations of that theme.
And so do you feel like that was your inside of you, or do you feel like there was an entity speaking to you?
I felt like it was inside of me, but it was like I was tuning in.
Tuning into a new part.
Tuning into like a message that was being broadcast to me. Like I was, like the dial on my brain had tuned into a radio station. And that whole message being broadcast to me was like this, the gibberish was like Bach's theme and variations. You know what I mean? It was like da 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 da. It's like it kept going and kept going, and the second that you thought that you'd heard all the possibilities, all of a sudden it goes in a different direction, and then and a new theme comes up. Hey man, don't be swatting the microphone when a flight comes up. What are you doing, man? Come on now, you're supposed to be experienced over here. What I'm saying though is that the experience of the mushroom speaking to me, and that was like some profound message that I wanted to get back in touch with. And it was so powerful, like to me, that experience, that the next day I went back in.
Really? Okay.
And obviously I didn't do enough research on mushrooms. I was too busy doing the research on the DMT to know that really you shouldn't do them day to day.
Yeah,
I mean, you can really do anything, but it's not smart. You'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
But the next day I had the rest of the bag. And that was really the deep, strong experience. And
you're doing this by yourself?
I was by myself, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And
what word did you use? A psychonaut, right?
I would say a somewhat experienced psychonaut, yeah. But
okay. That is quite. Well,
it was a trip. I mean, just to wrap up that story, man, is that the second day was just too much. I mean, obviously, as you can only imagine, that having back-to-back experiences, it's like you didn't go to the same place. You went to a totally different place, and you probably had a little bit more. So you're probably going to go to a much deeper, darker place, know. And I remember my friend prepping me. One of my dear friends is a wonderful composer. He prepped me by telling me, there's a book out there you should read. It really preps you for everything you're going to go through. And it was a book that was something based off the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And, it talks about the experiences as you're going through them, so you're aware of them whenever you get there. But basically, when he summed it up to me, he said along the lines of like, hey, man, you can definitely like go in there and just deal with your deepest, darkest like thing that you're not wanting to deal with, that issue, that secret, that problem that you're not wanting to face in your life. And so just be aware of that, because when you go in there, that beast might come up, and you might have to face it. And so I went into that experience, like that whole weekend by myself, knowing that and being aware of that. And so when I got there, I just went through it, man. And the deepest, darkest fear that I had was of being alone. And I faced that fear, and I realized and accepted that we are all alone. And once I was able to accept and embrace it, it was a beautiful thing. But I mean, I broke down. I was in tears. I called my dad. My father was away on a trip. He felt so bad because I was just in tears, and he was saying, do you want me to fly you out? I feel so bad. I'm sorry. I was just like, no, I'm so sad. I feel so alone. I just want to tell someone, I'm fine. I'll talk to you later. And that experience of really going in there. I mean, what I was trying to get at with this story and speaking to this and what I was going to say earlier was that a bad trip is not really a bad trip. What I was speaking to earlier of the sense of duality of good and bad. It's like, I don't like that people put that in your head that you're going to have a bad trip. I mean, of course, there can be things that you don't take into consideration. I mean, anyone that is researching into doing psychedelics should learn the words set and setting, because those things are powerful things to take into consideration for your experience not to go south, for things that were unseen or that you didn't think about before that might affect your trip,
I've never had a
bad trip.
A bad trip. I've had what I would call a hard trip, which is like saying not everything that's worthwhile is easy, and not everything that's easy is worthwhile, right? Sure. So like I've had trips where I got to put in work where it's like if you have been putting something off, whether it be with the way your body feels, or whether it be the way your relationships are working in the world, or your self-esteem or your ego, or the way that you're treating people, or a friend or a woman or a man or whatever it could be, it's probably going to be aware to you. If you're hiding from something, it's going to be available to you in that moment, and you're unavoidable.
This be brought up.
And at least with me, every time I do mushrooms, it's right there in my face.
And that's a hard trip, but I think those are the most important trips that we can have.
Well, what do you want to do? You want to hide from something your whole life?
What I'm just saying is is like when people go into psychedelics, and there's nothing wrong with it, because I don't think you ought to do with anything away. I'm just saying go into everything with intention.
I'll throw a little diss. So let me talk about my history with drugs a little bit. My history is a little bit different. So I started smoking weed and alcohol in the 8th grade. Wow. And then it got more serious in high school. And but there used to be this psychedelic drug called what was something, Claudio? Do you remember a psychedelic drug that they used to sell at smoke shops that was like legal? Salvia. Yeah. Salvia. There was something called Salvia. Salvia d'Amora. Yeah, that they used to sell in smoke shops. And I started smoking this once in a while in high school. And it's like a very, very uncomfortable high. But it could take you completely out of your life. Very like similar to DMT in the way that you kind of launch and could be completely away from your awareness. Dimension. But different than DMT, is like very uncomfortable for your body. Is you get like clammy and claustrophobic and very much of like tunnel vision, and I never experienced anything bad, and so that was my introduction into psychedelics.
But Salvia was what, like in high school? So
in
like
high school,
11th grade, something like that.
I think the first time I touched it was 10th grade. Yeah, 10th grade, and then 11th grade, 12th grade, and then I probably did it 10 times. I had a really bad trip one time at a college party where someone had bought some, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know, I'm scared, I'm scared, I don't know."
Bobby was like, "I've done it, I'll do it."
And I'll be like, "Look, guys, it's not a big deal. I'm gonna do it." And I hit this salvia out of this vaporizer, and these are close friends of mine, but there's too many of them. It's 20 people around, and they're all kind of like looking at me to see if I'm gonna be okay. And as soon as I launched,
did he die?
All I could, Claudio, I don't know if I've ever been more scared in my entire life. As soon as I launched, I thought that I died.
Yeah.
And my friends' faces popped up to take up my entire visual field.
Wow.
And so I was just surrounded by my friends' faces and like some slow motion, them laughing at me. Look at him. And I thought that my friends were angels sent into my life to judge me. And I thought that this was the judgment day and that I had died and was going to be judged. And I saw this little pinhole between their faces that I could get out of. It felt like I was Alice and I was trying to squeeze back through that tiny door that she got into.
Yep.
And what I actually did was take my friend's bookshelf and throw it on the ground. But I was completely unaware. It was a big bookshelf, man. It was like 8 feet high, and apparently, like, people were trying to stop me, and I'm like wrestling like a wild animal. Like if you ever seen something that's like super scared, your muscles come to a point where they have more energy and more strength. So that was when I was maybe 19 years old. I had this and I did salvia again after that. Just because I'm a maniac that doesn't believe in ending things on a bad note, but I've had enough with salvia at this point. I don't know if I would ever pursue it, or if it popped up, I don't know if I would want to try it out. But so I had a fear of psychedelics that kind of kept me away from mushrooms, and I had heard of ayahuasca and DMT, and I had a fear that pervaded for a couple years. But then when I was 22. I started taking mushrooms, and I do them about every couple months. And people don't understand like how, like, for sure I've seen some beautiful visuals and some things pop up, but they think it's like, oh my gosh, did you ride on a dragon? And it's like, no, you don't ride on a dragon. You just kind of appreciate the beauty in the world. It's like waking up, because there's a way that your brain is wired to be efficient and to handle things super quickly. And there's a wonder with little kids, the way they look at a world, and they'll come across a fabric and admire it and study it and look at it, and they'll come across a plant and study it and look at it, and they'll take notice of everything in their surroundings. And and mushrooms kind of put me in that place where I could be fascinated with the world again, you know. And that's and then a very introspective drug for me. But I would never. What I think I learned from that salvia is that there's a setting, you know, like you want to be comfortable. You don't want to be around people that are judging you.
Setting is you don't so want to important.
Because I could see, I've heard stories of people that take that have bad trips, and I think a lot of it has to do with the energy that you pick up from other people. So if you could, I really don't think that. I think if you could monitor the people that are around you and kind of be in a comfortable place where you're not going to have to encounter too many people, I think the chances of you having a bad trip kind of drop significantly.
I agree with that, man.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Interesting little. So tell me, did you get into DMT, dude?
Man, so DMT was an interesting thing for me, Bobby. It's probably been, of all of the psychedelics, the one that I've got the deepest relationship with. And it's funny because you and I both are, well, I'm a graduate alum, but you're still an alum of UNM somewhat. But at the University of New Mexico.
I have a bachelor's degree from the University of New Mexico. We're both graduate alums.
Come on now. All right. So both of us being graduates of the University of New Mexico, there's such a rich history that is deeply rooted with our university, and I came to know about this when I was away from New Mexico. It was 2012, and I was living in New Orleans. And I had a national student exchange opportunity to go to the University of New Orleans. So I moved down there and was living basically in an art commune, you know, in a 3-story building with about 12 people. And some people recommended some Netflix documentaries. You know, everyone's in their room chilling a lot and doing their thing. And so some people had recommended some, and I can't remember if DMT, the spirit molecule, that documentary had gotten recommended, or someone had recommended something that then made that pop up in the suggestions. But I watched that documentary that is available for people to check out on YouTube or on Netflix, or purchase. Really, you should go purchase that. It's a wonderful, amazing documentary that really is kind of like the movie based on the book that was written by a gentleman named Dr. Rick Strassman.
Yeah.
And he was a professor at the University of New Mexico. And he did these studies at the University of New Mexico. And I learned about that stuff when I watched the documentary. Joe Rogan narrates it. That was probably around the time
That's
that
right. Yeah, that's right.
started.
Joe Rogan's on the podcasting legend.
Oh yeah,
Joe
man.
Rogan.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Rick Strassman, the University of New Mexico. I actually read the book, The DMT.
Did you?
Spirit Molecule.
Yeah, so-
yeah, and it was.
So you were aware. I mean, that book is powerful, man, and like that is the in-depth story and descriptions of everything that happened in 1989, 90, 91, 92, when Dr. Rick Strassman applied through the FDA and got approved to do the first studies on psychedelic drug since studies had been closed, since the hippie revolution in government had kind of put a cease on any studies on psychedelics. And so he opened that back up and did those studies here at UNM. And in the Daily Lobo, or in maybe it was the Albuquerque Journal or something, put out in a classifieds ad looking for people to come do DMT in that hospital situation, And so in that book, obviously, as you know, it depicts and it goes into all of the stories as people experienced it, and they were experienced DMT in a medical situation. So they were in a hospital room. They were taking all observations of their bodies, so they had all these sensors all over their bodies, all over their brains. They had a butt plug up to observe, all of their body movements, all their, temperature, everything that was happening. They wanted to see it.
Uh-huh.
And that was one of the things that Dr. Rick Strassman was advised to do, was just take observations. And so they injected DMT into these patients, and over different sessions would inject more or less depending on how deep they went in or how much not or what. But man, that documentary did so much to open up my relationship with drugs and make me think about wanting to go do psychedelics. And so I decided I was just going to go do this. And I did about 12, 13, 14 months of research before I finally got in touch with it. And a friend of mine had gotten some, and so I went to his place and we tried it. And I remember, initially, like, there wasn't, much happening. It was like I hit the, it was packed inside of a bong, and there was marijuana underneath it, and the DMT was sprinkled on top. And I remember smoking and then hitting it again and then kind of going back and feeling a little bit weird. But then I remember going back in. My friend said to me, if you want to hit it again, you can hit it again. So I went back in, and on that next one, it was like I leaned back to, lay down and fall asleep, and just like kept falling down through the ground into another dimension of just colors and infinitely changing designs and patterns. And every second, the experience changed and became more and more complex and different. And that was the first time that I tried it. That was in 2013. And then I tried it again later that year. It was funny because that year I did that experience in the spring. And in that summertime, I went down to Colombia in June and spent a bunch of time with family, all surrounded by family. I have a huge family, And so it was a huge heart-opening experience for me. And when the year before, I had given up being a Catholic. I make a joke that says I'm a 6 years recovering Catholic,
Okay.
And so when I went down to Colombia, it opened up my heart, I say, and I went to South Africa. I'd gotten an international student exchange program, through the arts department. I got accepted to that and went down to Cape Town, South Africa. And so I went and did these two experiences. When I went down to South Africa, I opened up my heart to the experience of spirituality as it was actually happening in Africa. So on Sundays, I went to Pentecostal churches, I went to Catholic churches, I went to, Anglican churches. I went to, the mosque with Muslim friends of mine during Ramadan, and celebrated Eid during Ramadan. And that experience, put me in such a place that I came back home from that trip to South Africa in August and had, at the end of August, another experience with DMT. And it was the most life-changing experience I ever had, in terms of really blowing the doors of perception of what we are. Of dying, of becoming something, of making a relationship with things in my life to realize that I'm walking exactly the path that I need to be walking, and the path is unfolding in front of me,
Some of the crazy things that I think people don't realize about DMT is like, one thing, it's not addictive. You're not gonna be addicted to it. You're not gonna want to be doing DMT every day. You're not gonna get urges to do it.
You do not get the urge to do
psychedelics. You don't get an urge to just be like, God, I gotta give me some mushrooms.
Right.
And that happens with alcohol. That happens with coffee. Right. That happens with cocaine. That happens with opiates.
Oh yeah.
But it does not happen with psychedelics. They're not interested. I mean, I know that you were interested in diving into mushrooms 2 days in a row, but you weren't interested in diving into mushrooms 3 days in a row.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
No.
And
no.
And anyone that's ever had an addictive problem, they could be worried, but it's just not prevalent in the. And another thing that about DMT that I think is fascinating is that you feel better after you do it.
Oh yeah, man.
You can smoke DMT and feel like you spent the last 5 minutes meditating. Like you can.
Oh yeah.
You can feel like.
Oh yeah. It is
less
the most
foggy,
warm,
more awake.
I remember after that trip, that initial trip that I told you about before I went to go do all that stuff early in the spring. I had that trip, and after I had that trip, I came back, and it was like there was a warm, fuzzy feeling all around the solar plexus of, like the center of my chest. And when I read in about that, or talked to some friends about that, or somehow at that point I talked to some people about that, and it's like that I don't mean to sound hippie, but your heart chakra was really being super opened, and you just have this warm sense of love and gratefulness, absolute gratitude, So
let me tell you about my first DMT experience, because it relates to what you're saying here.
Yeah.
So my first DMT experience, I had one of my good friends at the time watching me, and I vaporized this DMT powder and held it in my lungs as long as I can, and then as soon as I blew out, my world is overtaken by geometrical shapes and colors, and my entire visual field is just covered with this, and the light show's going on for 5 minutes. I see kaleidoscoping hexagons with different colors, and then my visual field gets taken over by hieroglyphics and like dancing art from Egypt and peacocks, and all sorts of amazing stuff is happening in my visual field. But then the most amazing thing happens, is my life flashed before my eyes in the most beautiful, positive way imaginable, where all of a sudden I just look at my life from an instance of like, wow, like there was a girl I was in love with at the time, and just moments of being extremely happy and in love with her, and moments of like deep laughter with my best friends, and of holding the people that I care most dearly to me, and just extreme joy. And this all happened over the course of a couple minutes, and then it ended. And DMT only lasts 10-15 minutes at the most, and and I just remember coming out of it and feeling amazing, and then being like, what the heck kind of drug is this? And even though it was that positive of an experience, you still don't need to do it so people be like, man, I would really wish I could acquire some DMT. It's like if you understood middle school chemistry, you could prepare some DMT for yourself.
To my understanding, sadly for me, man, I was terrible at my science classes, so I kind of messed up and am out of luck on that one. But us living in Albuquerque and having a lot of chemists, so they say around here,
Yeah, different. It's just this thing. It's pervasive throughout life. It's found. You can find all these different plants have deposits of DMT in them, and
it's rich in the environment. It's all around us.
Yeah. So
it's all around us.
It's not hard to find. It's not unnatural.
Well as our bodies are natural producing DMT machines. We are drug making machines. Obviously our whole body. With chemical, things that happen. But what I wanted to bring up is that you said addiction, and you talked about psychedelics. And one of the psychedelics as well that people. Way less people venture down into is iboga, and that's a powerful psychedelic that is something like a 24-hour experience of you fully dying and coming back, but it breaks. It's known to, there have been many studies that have come out showing it's totally breaking addiction to pain meds, to heroin.
That's right. Yeah, I read that people...
There are actual clinics in Costa Rica or some other places in Central or South America that actually have these centers where people can go and do these treatments, man. And more, a lot of the psychedelics are being used in therapeutic ways, man. Actually, a friend of ours that we were just talking about, a little while ago, Ryan Miles, is a piano player friend of ours who's now studying to be a psychologist. And, went through, is in medical school. He's doing his residency now. Excuse me, Ryan, if you're listening to this and he's in something else. But he was doing some studies where they were addressing alcoholism and treating it with small doses of psilocybin, of mushrooms. And so this experience, as well as, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, MAPS, has also been doing some studies, not studies, but actual treatments of MDMA, of ecstasy, in controlled settings where they use it, with PTSD victims, veterans, just people that in general need that reconnection with love and embracing a traumatic experience that they had or some kind of thing that they're dealing with in their life. So more and more psychedelics are coming out to be therapeutic, but everything, can be anything, too much can be bad for you.
Could be abused, could be, And
granted, there are shamans in South America that grow up learning the plant by taking it every day, So it's like, there's everyone's different, is what I want to say. No one is the same, even though we all try to talk about we are the same. Yes, we are the same, but,
Well, you could ride the happy train, and you could say that I think, and I feel the same, and if you disagree, that's fine. You have the right to disagree, but I don't think that that all these drugs are medical every time that they're used. So there's
and that's what I was saying earlier.
There's shamans in Central America that are doing a bad job of what they're doing.
Absolutely,
there's shamans
abusing.
There's shamans here that are doing a bad job of what they're. Well, it's a powerful spot to put someone in faith of, because you're kind of like very vulnerable once you expose yourself to psychedelic drugs. So you're putting someone a lot of trust in somebody, and it's a big amount of responsibility for them. And there have been some tragedies, but at the same time, people will hear about the tragedies, and then there's also been miracles. There's also something that I'm really excited about is that I believe it's going to make a big difference in our country and probably worldwide. Is as psychedelics become from a fringe topic to a mainstream topic. The way when I was in high school, it did not seem like marijuana was about to be culturally accepted in the U.S., and then it happened. Yeah. It happened pretty quickly, it seemed like we were just a fringe group of people that thought that it should be legal, and the idea that it would ever happen would be insane. And then now I'd say it's almost an inevitability that it will become legal soon.
Only in the same way,
and in the same way, marijuana can be abused. It can be medical. It can be negative. It can be positive. I believe the same thing with psychedelics. Has less potential for abuse because it doesn't have habit forming. But Michael Pollan just wrote a book about the therapeutic methods that you could potentially use mushrooms for to help people with various different symptoms that they could be going through, whether it be a lot of times anxiety, stress, mental health disorders. And when you think, I'm a believer that if we're able to establish safe centers and enjoyable places for people to do, it could benefit a lot of people's lives, and a lot of people that you wouldn't imagine it could benefit their lives. Like a lot of people that you were like, oh man, that's my crazy cousin. She doesn't do anything right. Like that chick hates everybody. Well, maybe she'll stop hating everybody once her brain gets alternative options for a way to be wired. But all that efficiency that her brain's wired to just go from here to that guy's a motherfucker could go from like here to maybe I could help that guy, because that's what mushrooms have been shown to build new neuronal bridges inside of your mind. Psilocybin has that activity. So for people that are on the wrong track, it has a lot of potential to help them out.
It can help you reset. That's totally true. But also in the other aspect of who it could help out, it's like it could also help out that straight guy that is working the 9 to 5 and is absolutely miserable and hating his life to have a crazy psychedelic experience that changes his life to totally pursue something that he's always wanted to do and has been totally scared to do and totally becomes an outlier. Steve Jobs credits his trip, his LSD trip, with influencing his direction in life or something along the lines of that.
For sure.
I'm totally bro-sciencing out or relaying information from second or third hand, but the reality is that there have been many, many powerful people that have come out as psychedelic users who have used psychedelics, and it has propelled their lives in so many powerful ways and helped them, aided them with tools to think outside of the box, of course, but also just to face those deepest, darkest fears, which is something we were talking about earlier.
I kind of want to. What's the name of our podcast here? What are we on?
It's called Art Talk Music.
Art Talk Music, baby. There we go. What a beautiful time. And I'm so happy that you're making a podcast, Claudio. I'm excited. Man. I'm excited. I didn't realize until today that when you asked me to be on, that you had a podcast, and I'm excited for future episodes and to listen to the episodes that you already have recorded, and hopefully a frequent guest. I hope so.
Hey, absolutely.
Let's This is what I want to talk about. Yeah. This is what because we're on Art Talk Music, I want to get into art just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel, and this has been a gradual experience in my life. Growing up, my experience was being very, very physical and very good at sports and quick-witted with math and ability to memorize science, and kind of a mean kid. But I was not talented naturally or disciplined in any form of art, right? Mm-hmm. So going through life, I remember feeling a little bit jealous of you. I had a girlfriend in high school who was a guitar player. I had her mom was a guitar player. There was all these different people that had these ways of expressing their emotions and their energy, and I just kind of felt like, well, wow, those guys are so lucky that they have that, And as I've grown, I've realized like how many people are lacking expression in their lives, like how many people everything is intake to them.
Sure.
Everything is intake, whether it be like, I'm gonna relax, I'm gonna read a book, I'm gonna watch a television show, I'm gonna whatever it is, and there's nothing going out really.
Right.
I mean, sometimes I'm not saying this for everybody, but there's a very, very many people that this is true for, where they are not really putting things out into the world in mode to express themselves. And you think about these different all these words have a similar root, right? Suppression, expression, depression.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
And so depression is terrible. What's the word that epidemic going through our country? We have serious mental health problems, and I believe that suppressing yourself from expression, like not being able to announce your feelings to the world.
Yeah,
I believe that's leading to it, and expression is the answer. So there's I'm honored to be on your podcast. I'm not a professional artist, but I am an advocate for anybody and everybody to start practicing art in any way that they feel is artistic, whether it be
amen,
whether it be painting,
a woman, come on now,
anything. It could be anything. I'm loving these long form conversations that we have. Conversation is a form of expression.
It is,
but
well.
I think writing. I think anybody listening to this who feels like, man, maybe I haven't been expressing myself in any manner at all.
Man, it's not hard.
They could be having, the
opportunity to do it, and you're so right that suppression from expression is such a reality, and it's crazy you bring that up because that trip that I was speaking about earlier where I went down to South Africa was a trip that I did through a program called Arts in Medicine. And what it was acknowledging the arts in the medical professional situation and how we can redefine the arts as a tool, as being a tool that is medicine, that helps us heal, and is very, very much a vital part of helping us get quicker, get better sooner, you know. And so we went down there with that intention of each one of us in our groups. It was 7 students from the University of New Mexico. It was arts departments. It was 2 guys, and he and I were in the music department, and everyone else was in the theater or the dance or the art department or the photography, or, you know. And we collaborated. We went down to Cape Town and collaborated with 7 of the University of Cape Town's medical students. And we were in a classroom together, all 14 of us with our 2 teachers, putting our heads together, thinking we made these things called creative encounters, where we would go into situations and we would use these activities, these creative encounters, to engage everyone around us in whatever expression at that moment we were going to do. And so the sites that I visited were all hospice cares. Mm-hmm. So there were much older people who were, as a priest very kindly put it, he said, there are people that are here at the bus station awaiting their bus. And being able to invent, you know, practices or exercises with songs or with drawing or with crafts to engage these people and bring them out of their suffering, their hurt for that minute, for those couple minutes, for that day. I mean, that doesn't just heal them and help them out, but it heals me and helps me out. You know?
It's incredible.
And so, like, that experience with people as well as with the arts and redefining the arts is a very powerful thing that I agree with you, man. We all need to do. It's good for our souls to sit down and noodle on our you know, notebook, or listen to a song and hum along. You know what I'm saying? Because you put on a good, you know, one of those upbeat songs and you feel great. You know what I'm saying? And so when we would go into one of those places, I remember, you know, one of the last places we went in there, and we all knew that they were musical. We had visited them before we went to do the actual site visit, and so we got an idea of who we were going to see. And there was this one character that was amazing, man. Her name was Mama Ida, and she was the character. You know what I'm saying? She was like the expression. Like, she was actually a healing lady. She was a shaman, so she would speak for all the group and stuff like that. And so she would also sing. You know what I'm saying? Like, she was so loud, such a loud spirit. Beautiful, beautiful woman. And when we came, I decided to do the music project as, we'll teach you a song and you teach us a song. And so I used a song that is actually in a movie that Spike Lee made called Mo Better Blues, and it's the theme song. And it's just a beautiful song that's very simple, got a very simple melody, and I used the melody to improvise some words and say to the ladies, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, I wrote this song for you, now your turn to sing me something. It's like I would sing them this whole thing, and they like loved it, man. They loved, I'm
sure they did,
the song.
Listen to that voice,
to
man.
The point.
Wow.
They loved it to the point to where they were like, yeah, like the Mama
You're telling
Ada.
me the ladies loved you singing to them? Are you joking me? How did
the experience of like us singing a song that they liked, because it was something that they can connect with. It was a simple song with a simple melody. They asked us to play it 3 more times.
Wow.
We played it a total of 4 times. And after the 4th time, because they wanted to call in the priest, they wanted to call in the cook, they wanted to call in everyone to have them hear the song that we put together.
So this is...
But what I want to, just to finish that story before you say that, is that what happened at that very last time, and I have this recorded, it's a gem of a moment, man. I have to somehow put it out there into the world. But this lady, Mama Ida, says to me after she brought in the priest, you know, this is the guy that said that expression about people being at the bus station. Profound dude, you know, wonderful guy, wonderful priest father, I should say. He says to me that, because she didn't speak in English, so she would speak to me in Osa, excuse me. And he would...
What was that word?
Osa.
Okay.
Osa is...
I'm not going to try to pronounce that.
Every time I do it, the clack sounds a little different. But okay. Osa is a South African language that the Zulu speak. And, you know, I might have said that incorrect, of course, but people in South Africa speak. And she was speaking that to me, and the priest was relaying to me what she was saying. And he basically said along the lines of, she wants to tell you that your music has made her feel better.
Wonderful.
And her
Man, that's
pain
amazing.
and suffering has gone away.
Wow.
Thanks to your song.
Wow.
And it was like the deepest feeling of gratitude because of both of us feeling that healing and that beautiful thing, as well as using the arts to really, affect someone's life. We're going to take a pause for 1 second. But yeah, man, to wrap up that story, it's a powerful message you're saying in relaying that all of us need to be more active in using any form of the arts to express ourselves, because that is therapy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have a saying that I put at the bottom of my emails that come up on my phone, and it says, music is medicine. And I truly believe that, And it shouldn't just be music is medicine, but it should be arts is medicine.
Well, so let me tell you something that's on my mind here.
Yeah.
Lots of times I like to think about health from an evolutionary biologist perspective, and what is natural for a human being to be doing. And if you think about the history of human beings, how much it's changing, how much our life is changing, and where we're at now, how different our life is than 99% of the history of human beings. So how long ago were people living tribally in villages? The majority of people worldwide, and the entertainment was a campfire and each other only, right?
Mm-hmm. And storytelling. Yeah.
So when that is the instant, and you're living in a village with maybe 20 people, you don't have a choice to say, no, I'm too shy. You don't have a choice to say, I don't have a pretty voice. I don't have good dance moves. I don't have that ability. Yeah. No. Yeah. Everyone's relying on you.
Right.
And you're relying on each other. You don't get to sit out of the song. You don't get to sit out of the dance. And it's very, very natural. It's a part of our history. It's a part of
everyone does it.
It's a part of and it belongs in us. To go through a period of your life without singing or dancing is unnatural and probably leads to illness. And so singing, dancing, music, art, creation is medicine in the deepest sense. It's connecting you with what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to feel if you can't let loose from yourself and your ego, and you can't enjoy dancing, then that's an issue that you have to deal with. It's not you're a terrible dancer. I don't believe that there's a terrible dancer or a terrible singer. It's just people that won't allow themselves to become a part of the art. Yeah. And when you do, it's a very liberating experience. So that was my experience in life, and that's been a very liberating experience for me.
That's good.
I didn't believe
I'm happy for you. Yeah.
I didn't believe in that I was a dancer. I didn't believe I could sing.
Right.
I didn't believe I could create art. I thought that was I left that reserved for the artists.
Right.
The artists were the entertainers, and I was the entertainee. Mm-hmm. And my only form of entertainment was competition, and it's not very communal,
Although I have to stop you and disagree with you, because your form of entertainment to the group, if we were in that group and was back in the day, was comedy. And your ability to make a group of guys laugh, and that ability is so powerful. You know what I'm saying? The ability to ease people, it not only creates this sense of trust that people automatically have in you, as well as this desire for all of the women to be like, oh my God, he's the alpha. It's like you're the one, that directs it. But what I also want to say to what you're saying is that man, people come up, when I do these art festivals with my father around the country, people always say, oh, I wish I was talented, And it's I always tell people, it's you are, you know what I'm saying? Everyone has something, and we just don't practice it that often, and you forget. But when we were all kids, we all drew, we were all drawing stuff, and we were all singing or making noise or dancing and moving around and all this kind of stuff, and we have this disconnection with it because someday we grow up.
Well, there's also a perception of being an artist that means that you're supposed to go pro, that because you're trying to make art, that you're trying to make money or something like that, right? So I taught myself how to play guitar and make music for my soul, and for my energy, and I play to myself 99. I mean, most of the time I'm playing, I play to myself, and it makes me feel better about my life and my situation, and it makes me happier, right? And And sometimes people ask me, they're like, "What are you going to try to make a living doing this?" And it's like, I never ever thought about making a living
it's
doing
just
this.
like that's the most beautiful relationship you can have with it is of doing it, for yourself.
Yeah, making movies or making anything that people think they like.
That's
like,
right.
What is more beautiful in
Writing
life? What are you
short
supposed to do
stories.
more than create?
Yeah.
Because we're here. We're the only species of animal on the planet that has the ability to create art, to express themselves in that way. It's like very. I'm sorry, I'm getting all caught up on art. I'm just on the art podcast.
Hold on though. Have you seen that elephant that draws?
I don't want to talk about it. Well, okay.
Or paints an elephant.
Well, I don't want to be lots of times I end up being a party pooper for people. So yeah, I saw the artist.
I know that's terrible stuff. I know that they're abusing the animal and all that thing.
But the artist the elephant can paint an elephant.
I'm teasing, But you're totally right in that expression that like we are all, you know what I'm saying, like capable of doing that, and we are the only species, that does that. And so
we're meant to do that.
Come on.
In my,
you know what I'm saying?
I believe the pit of my soul that you're not supposed to quit being an artist in your life. You're not supposed to quit being a learner, and you're not supposed to quit being an artist.
Yeah, but I mean, everyone has their own relationship with expression and what that means for them, and people have a disconnect whenever they're just doing all this logistic stuff that has nothing to do with them being creative. And so them having that disconnect for as many years as they go on walking that zombie life existence, and not to say that there's a bad or terrible way to live or that, that they are all zombies, but that disconnect with expression for them is what leads them to be in that moment and say, man, I wish I was expressive. And sometimes reminding people is like, yo, that can be a pretty powerful catalyst, for a lot of people.
I don't want to get on any type of better than anybody else type of situation, but I have, and I do agree that we're living in a state where a lot of people are miserable. But just because that you take a classic job doesn't mean that you have to be miserable or that you will be miserable or that that's not the right path for you. And when I say classic job, I mean like a modern, standard, American 9 to 5 type of industry where you work 5 days a week, you get 2 days off, hopefully. And there's a big push to go that way, and I don't try to pretend to know other people's lives or pretend to know what's right for other people.
Right.
But all I just want is to just hope, be like, hey, if that's not right for you, like if you're not happy, and this doesn't have meaning for you, like happiness comes and goes, but meaning is there, right? If meaning,
that's true.
If what you're doing isn't meaningful to you, then there's other options. There's a lot of ways to live in this world, and a lot of people live in like a very so I want to say like zombie, but just very, very shallow
fixed existence.
Very shallow viewpoint of routine. The way that life can be. Right. And then anybody with an alternative lifestyle becomes some sort of like rogue outlier, hippie or fringe weirdo, or something like that. And then what they don't realize is that this industry that what they consider to be normal and standard and necessary is very new. It's very new. It's not classic. There's no rules for it. Like the rules were just established in how many less entrepreneurs are there than there were 100 years ago? How many less entrepreneurs are there than there were 200 years ago? 99% of people were working in agriculture. 1% of people are working in agriculture now, and 99% are not. So there's just like society's changing, and this idea that we have to adhere to some sort of normal or some sort of standard that is advertised to us isn't true. And beautiful thing is that it's coming back. It's just, there's like a bounce back, and now there's more artists, there's more creatives, there's more people making money on the internet and connecting with all sorts of different society. Yeah. I don't know what I'm going off on. I'm just talking.
Bobby, it's great having you, man. I'm so glad you came over and
Claudio,
did the podcast, my man.
Claudio, I'm leaving town, but
I know, and that's why I wanted to get you in here, bro. We just reconnected. I saw you after you came back from your trip at our good friend's wedding, and I wanted to get you in here before you move, man. I'm so happy and proud of you, man, because you've always, ever since that summer in 2008, you've always had that yearning, and you've never ceased to just kind of like get to that plateau and be like, I've gotten here. You know what I'm saying? You keep going.
I got a lot
and
more.
You said
I
it
got a
already.
lot more stories, dude.
I know.
I'll come back. We'll 6 months,
do.
a year from now, and I'll share some more stuff.
Absolutely,
with you guys.
we'll definitely part 2, part 3, man.
Also, let me give my. So I'm starting my own podcast. I'm the Mouth of the Beast podcast. MOTB podcast.com. You can find me. So my goal, my mission is to really just find people that are interested in life and have these in-depth conversations. The same way that I told you I like to play guitar. I just think this is good for my soul to have these deep conversations with people, man. where I get an extended period of time. I have a lot of people that I love in my life that I think are very interesting, and a lot of people that I'm excited to learn more about them.
That's awesome.
As I do these talks. So yeah, anybody who's interested in following me, hopefully be putting up podcasts starting this week and then into the following. Yeah.
And how can people follow you? Like, what's your social media, or at least like?
I assume it's gonna be MOTB podcast, MOTB, the mouth of the beast. And it's not that I'm the beast. It's that you're coming straight from the mouth of our society, and what we're going to be talking about the world and covering it. A lot of times, I had an Instagram handle. I might start up my Instagram again. It was Brickhouse Bobby, and people thought that I was talking about how buff I am.
I loved it, man. I loved the Brickhouse Bobby thing.
It was me talking. I don't know. It just kind of rhymed. I saw some girl that was Brickhouse Brittany, and it was rhyming. And then in basketball, we used to call the kids that missed a lot of shots Brickhouse. So I thought it was funny, but
your basketball game's good, so you ain't gonna miss a lot of shots.
Yeah, he's solid.
Bro, have an amazing time in Arizona. I'm gonna come visit you out there, bro. And I love you. Thank you for coming on this podcast.
Love you too, man.
I'll definitely put all of the details of your podcast and all of that stuff within all of the description and the information for this podcast. But is there anything else you want to tell the people, my man?
Just thanks for listening. If you stayed this long, then that means a lot. So I really appreciate you guys, Claudio. Yeah. It's been great, man. Hopefully we get to do another one soon.
Absolutely, we will, my man. Safe travels to you, bro.
Bye.
Love you, man.